Should be live. Am I live? Oh God, just another day. Happy Sunday, yeah. God. um, no. How do I access Franka Z-Face emails? Like, I have no idea because the FFC icon disappeared. It's not in the chat box anymore. Yes, it's live. Is it live? Yeah. Still eating breakfast. I might disappear off the mic because I am eating breakfast. So I don't wanna into the mic. Open the legacy pop-up chat. I use the normal pop-out. Why would? Oh God, that's complicated. I see. So I can't actually use it from inside the website. I gotta use the pop-out. That sucks. No, 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 no. At Twitch. There you go. No. No, 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 no. Okay, gotta mute my things. Okay, there's still plenty of people that didn't refresh, but that's fine. It's fine. How to lose viewers is just like when I switch from the VOD, people stay behind. Maybe because they're lurk or they're not even watching. But this is live. This is live. It's not a VOD. Maybe it's a VOD. Maybe it will be a future VOD. Who knows? But breakfast. And I'm still, let's say, back at figure drawing. I'm still sleepy, which was weird. Like after stream yesterday, I went to bed, but I ate. I played some Overwatch. I went to bed. I slept one freaking hour, 1 hour, 60 minutes, but I was awake. Like, let's go, things to draw, and all the stress and all the other mental weirdness was completely gone. I loved it. I made some progress, had to go back to shoulders. It's, and I even write things down, which I usually don't do. It's like just analyzing why certain things are affected. So there is rotation affects angles, inclination of the surface affects angles, and the perspective affects angles. So it's like perspective works. This how I break this down is you have horizontal ones and you have vertical ones, and depending on what is changing in what way, it's like you have X Y Z axis, and then you can rotate and find your like the actual orientation of something in space. It's not just a point. You have to have like your coordinate system in local space and global space, and then finding all the different ways to align your objects inside a space. It kind of is. It's represented by basically you have two lines that build what we call angle, and depending on how these angles change, what is it? Basically from this to this to this, or vice versa, you have different alignment in space. Kind of universal. You can't really get around this. But I can't. Um, yeah, I kinda wanna have a laser, like sight into how the brain understands the world. That would be quite funny. Basically, when I think about drawing, it's probably different than how other people think about drawing. So if otherwise I have to ask people, how do you think about drawing? It's otherwise I would like to just look into the brain and have it all presented. What's up, Adam? The way I would make sense of things, and I can make these weird comparisons. If I look at myself, how things were when I try to draw, and like it couldn't work. It couldn't work. You try to understand something that it kind of has to be rooted in your brain, but it doesn't work this way. So it definitely is like um, trying to learn Chinese by not taking any lessons, but by just copying the Chinese letters that you can see. Then when we work from reference, there is a difference, right, between just drawing and actually learning or actually studying something. There's a big difference. The one is kind of shut your brain off and just eat your cereals. In this case, your cereal is your information. You just gotta absorb it. Otherwise, study is a more active approach. That is how I see this. Then when it comes to what is weird kind of way of thinking. Um, Looking at how much I want to draw, and then looking at how much I can be lazy. Well, basically not be lazy, but there is a. It seems to be the best next step. Like if I want this, I can't just sit there idly by and wait for this thing to come to me. And then when it comes to drawing, like fuck, dude, I need this. Come closer. I'm coming at you. I'm not letting go. I could just go on and just yap about things that went through my brain over a couple of weeks last week, and I think I had an entire week of silent streams where my brain was completely absorbed. I was stressed, I didn't sleep because I was stressed and drew too much. I had to make progress. Also, going about, I don't really know. I don't really know. It's something I'm asking chat. So how does this work in your brain, and how do you think it works for other people? When we draw, we make this line work, right? Where you can look at the reference and you basically it's kind of what we see people do. Like turn on any drawing stream and you see them draw, right? And this can lead to your drawing. Yes, so you have your figure drawings, and you would still look at the outline, which is your silhouette, this one. And then you have, let's say, internal kind of things like the collarbone. It doesn't affect the outside or the silhouette. Um, so for me, there kind of is no difference. And then if my issue in my brain is going towards light and shade. Like I can't. What I'm doing is I'm trying to decipher the code of the surface. This is like I can see the outlines, right? I can see all of this. I can see all of this, right? I can see the values and all of these changes, so I can say I can paint, right? And this is to understand the 3D surface. You would go by you need color because the thing has color. You need values and you need shading. Um, for some reason, that doesn't apply to me. My brain doesn't like this approach. And it seems might even be insufficient. It's not really. I don't even know what I'm saying complete enough. It's like my brain. It's kind of like this. There's the children's toy that has these weird looking forms on the side, like the squares and the triangles and the boxes, and you're supposed to stick the right kind of shape in the right kind of hole, right? So these are like 3D bricks or something. So you stick the roundness in this. So the surface of the drawing is basically one of my shapes, and I want to put it in the wrong hole. I don't know, but basically the drawing is of a certain shape, completely random. And I have to, the box is my brain, and I have to reinvent something in my brain, or rewire, recondition my brain to not just stay within these set shapes, but basically know how to read the shape that I want to fit in. And it's like it's so weird, and I can't go from, like, I don't really think about light and shade. I don't know. It's so weird, and I'd rather use the lines than rely on light. It's a weird thing, and for me, I talked about this yesterday very briefly about what was it? Understanding the visual markers, or the visual marks that are left on paper. And if you can decipher these marks, the things that you see on paper, you can basically read language. It's the same thing. And then instead of having this ABC and language and words, we have marks that describe 3D form instead of linear language. It's the same stuff, right? There is no difference for the brain. You see something and you identify the something. And then you can identify this as an A. And then you can basically identify the proper marks. And this is where the brain just does its magic. Somebody asked this yesterday. Was it you? Somebody asked this. I mean, yeah, that's true. Technically, there's nothing ugly until and unless you deem it ugly. Same thing with good or with beauty in general. If you don't see it, if you don't feel it, if you don't perceive it, it does not exist. As in, it's like outside of your perceptual range. And therefore, it does not exist. What's up, City-chan? How are you doing? How's the Sunday? Here's something. Okay, values. Values go from one state to the next. And this is basically from the darkness to the brightness, or from the brightness to the darkness. There is no other value change shift, because you have something light and it has to transition to something lighter or something dark. And this is value. This is like the linearity of value. You have dark and you have light, and that's it. When it comes to lines, you have a distinction between X, Y, and Z. And this is where I don't really think about light, because I would think about what is the actual surface direction. And that works in 3D space. I have a point which I turn into a square. Then I think about what is the orientation of my square. Right? I still have the point. Does it point this way? Does it point this way? And I'm using the first lines as my indications for direction. I can point this in 360 degrees. And then I have, on top of this, I basically, what I do when I hatch, for every axis has its own distinguished angle. This is where you can have this horizontal or vertically, but between every plane there is a hard separation, meaning if these are arrows, they would collide with the next line. they don't really go across, right? They don't go across, but this can still work and it's viable because this is where things kind of get flowy when they cover two axes. So instead of using darkness and brightness and values in painting and thinking about light, I decipher my surface on X, Y, Z. As in, I'm looking at the surface directly instead of looking at the light. It is weird. I don't know. It's weird. And still, if I have the surface like this, and I say my light is coming from this point and it could be behind the person's head, like behind it or in front. And then depending on the location, it would basically apply different values of lightness and brightness and darkness to any of these basically planes. Just like this happens for the cube. Where's my cubes? If I have a cube, and whatever the lighting situation would be, there is one plane that is the brightest, and there's one plane that has to be the darkest because it is facing away from the light. The plane in between is something where you have 50% of this maybe, and maybe 50% of this. So it's definitely, it has to be the medium gray. And again, I'm kind of messing up these angles. Otherwise, I would still need to change my hatching to something horizontal, more horizontal. So anyway, this would be the medium dark gray, and this is, as far as I know and as far as I remember, this is a 1, 2, 3 read. Because you can identify every plane, every compartment, everything that is part of your thing. Using the values, it makes sense, but for me, using the lines and identifying the surface makes so much more sense. Because knowing the surface in space and then finding your direction of light will kind of, it's a direct translation to the right appropriate value. As in, you know your planes, and then you find out its angle towards the light. So you have your light, and then you have your plane. Whatever the plane would be, it could face towards the light. This would be, it's like our ground that we stand on when we stand below the light bulb. The ground plane that we stand on has this angle towards the light. So depending on what angle this has towards the light, there is a natural value. There is a value that will be applied. Just because this is how it's supposed to describe the form. It's not about the light. It's not about it's so weird. And things kinda come together in this place. And it's actually where I try to use both. At some point, to describe certain I don't know, certain indications of the surface, I just use the value because it's easier instead of still using lines and trying to figure out these weird angles and such. But this makes sense for me, and it's value is linear. Value goes from 0 to 1. Lines and angles, they go in X, Y, Z. And they're kind of universal. I mean, values would be universal, but still, it's just, it seems to be so insufficient. I don't know. I'm thinking about this, trying to figure out, why does my brain do it this way? Why does my brain not do it any other way? Right. So the value itself, and again, I would think about this is like the screen space. I did the weird diagram yesterday, so this is where I have my value. And then the value is supposed to describe 3D space. And this is where There's something in my brain, something somewhere, I don't know. And I find it so much easier to work with lines and then apply the value. The value is like the skin of your objects. Does the It's so weird. I'm asking if the value doesn't do anything in terms of 3D or perspective. Any line is automatically, it can be part of any sort of 3D space. The blob of value has no indications of how it's supposed to sit in space. The line can do this for you instantly. The value has to be put in a shape, and this would start, you have to have the lines like this. This is just like this. And instead of painting this and being, I don't even know, I can just draw 4 lines. And every line contains perspective information. I can't really say this blob of value contains perspective information because it's not the value. It is the lines. So that I can go from this and actually say it's part of a box. This is life. What's up, Casket? When can art be beautiful? I mean, anything can always be beautiful. The thing is, line is a word that we use to describe something rather graphically. And funny enough, yes, lines in this case don't really exist because it's an edge, right? And we see this still, we can't graphically, we call this a line. We have a shape, the skin shape, and the blue shape. So what is in between? What is in between? How do we call this? It's a barrier. It's a visual barrier that separates the one from the next. And this is what we call a line. We can call it doesn't matter, call it a worm, call it a snake, call it a noodle, call it something, whatever. But true, it doesn't really exist. Like not in this case. So what I know is, how my brain thinks is, if I have this line as my outline, if I draw the body from the profile view, I would have this line running across the body. Just like this line is still, it could be still visible. This line is actually the profile line. When I draw the body from the profile, just guess what is this line and where would it be? But it is obvious that it should be there. If I have a second line running through like this, it would be there. It has to be there. And this again, it's just another part where I think about the space or the form or the lines that make the form, and it doesn't work with value because value doesn't tell you beep, bad words. And this too, it makes sense. Value itself is it's a code. It's a code. It's not a code, but a code, clear code. Like the skin that you put on your wires, or the frame things. What I focus on, it depends. It changes. It definitely varies from thing to thing. But besides the anatomy, I focus on my lines because it is the lines that make my form. So when I mess up with my form, when I say these drawings look bad and they're not properly accurate, I don't look at the anatomy. I look at how my lines represent my form. And then I have to go through all of these variations and alterations so that I can find the proper line balance, I don't know, angle balance stuff. If your angle balance is not correct, and this is where you can If your angles between your two lines are correct, you will draw the proper cube. If any of these lines is bad, is wrong, you will notice, because there is something you will definitely notice. And this is what I look at. When this is my anatomy, I don't look at the anatomy, but I look at every piece. Every piece. And identify, is this right, is it not? And so it becomes a puzzle. And the studying is basically, you make the mistake and you have to analyze it and find out how to fix it. I can take a look. Are you in the Discord? Just post it in the Discord. So in a way, I'm using anatomy. I'm using whatever subject I draw to study the fundamentals. I'm still studying the subject, but what I really want to know is how to create the surface, as in properly create the 3D volume. I don't know. There is a difference. There is a kind of difference. I don't just want to make the thing. I want to know how to really control the process of making the thing works. Then again, I end up with my XYZ space and lines. Step one of the things with the direction. Direction, you have your wristwatch, 12, 3, 6, and 9. You have your clock handle and it moves around. This is direction on a 2D space. Then you transition this where you have direction in a 3D space. The keyword really is the direction. Values do not describe this. They don't. They really don't. And I finally know why I like lines so much and why I don't use values. Finally. The values will always need a shape. And if your shape that is created by your values is not in perspective, it will not work. This is where the shape of the thing has to be in perspective. And that goes back to where I can paint something like this, and it takes me a crazy amount of time actually. Otherwise I just do this. I draw the square, because the square and these lines are part of perspective and part of the box. I don't necessarily study the anatomy. I study what makes the anatomy, and in my case it's definitely the drawing, the hatching, there's angles, lines, planes, geometry, etc., etc. There is a lot of repetition, there's a lot of problem solving and all that stuff. Is it Inika? So basically, part of this is you break things down. Just like you can always draw what you see. You can break it down into gesture, into figure, into volume, into light, into shading, into color, into painting, and then kind of find out which part is the most attractive. I like drawing. I don't really care much about painting. I know I want to paint, but it's deep down in the chasms and dungeons, so I don't really go there unless I feel like it. So breaking things down, and it makes it easier to kind of comprehend the kind of complexity. And at first things seem really complex and kind of complicated at first, and then you start to break things down, and you will see that you don't really learn it all at once. Just like you don't eat the cake as a whole, but you eat it slice by slice. and you would end up with um, breaking things down into boxes, 3D boxes. You can break things down into shapes, such as these. These are 2D. These are 3D. I construct from both. The 2D square shape still translates to the box because it does have the box body. And still, this remains something two-dimensionally. The next step really is locating your shapes. I'm basically breaking things down into shapes that make sense to you. And I'm using these shapes in a rather more or less appropriate way to create what I want to make. In this case, I'm drawing a figure. I'm partner, yeah, I'm a partner. I got emotes. If you have Twitch Prime, you have a free sub. Amazon Prime, you have a free sub every month. Take a look, maybe it ran out. Might as well use it here. Gotta love Spamfish. Spamfish salesman talk. This makes sense. This is like comprehensive. When you just look at everything at once, it is complete chaos and you have no idea how to go in, which kinda goes to some people still draw like this. And it does make sense, but you basically go line by line and you try to be very careful, and this is no good. And technically I drew like this once, right? You go line by line instead of actually, let's do this more. I'm drawing her arms, right? You go line by line. If I break this down into these groups, into these kind of shapes, I have my face, I have the main body potato, and then I have shapes that kind of make up these arms. And it goes so much faster to build this from shapes. And then you go on top. You basically remove lines that you don't need, and you turn your shapes from something that is the box into where it looks like it has kind of anatomy information. You would still, analyze this so that you can figure out how to actually draw simplified anatomy of this little potato still. That actually work. This is I would use these shapes to then translate into where I draw the form, and I make the form show. I don't rely on lighting. And all I really think about, I had this before, direction in space. It's all about direction. And again, what this means is her body is still slightly offset. And this is I had to observe and absorb so crazy amounts of information. So it's still offset to the side. We are not seeing her from the front. And we can say that this leg is pointing at us, the other leg is pointing away from us. Just like her face is definitely pointing to the side. So again, we have direction where I can say this is the face when it's looking at me. Then I find another shape, another box, another cube that separates directions. Again, something is looking away, something is looking at me. Again, I could just draw this like box pointing at me. Then there's another box pointing away. Technically, I'm missing the hips. Surgery. There we go. I don't really like connecting or knowing. It's so weird. Like the system or direction is telling me so much about what is actually going on, and it's not just even the hair. Like it's pure chaos. It literally is. And then I go in and I analyze this. What I know is there is a sphere, right? These are her eyes. And then I have the top of her face, where basically the hair comes from. And the hair is not like the lines themselves, they are always two-dimensional, and this is my issue. But the line that I see, the line that I have to draw is three-dimensional. It is covering 3D space. And something is actually going on in terms of direction. And that too is something I can't just look at it in a flattened way, which is like I have my box and all I really look at is the visual flat image that is represented to me on my iris image that is in my brain. So again, I have these two cubes, and I basically have one cube that is one cube that doesn't even exist. There is a difference between. Okay, let's see if I can do this. I'm trying to turn this. There's two boxes. This box is 3D. The other box is 2D, but it still looks like it's 3D because there's the thing, right? It's so weird. Let's see if I can try this. So what I'm trying to do is I take the shape of the 3D and I flatten this out. So what I look at is this is point X and this is point Y. What happens in 3D space is that these are not aligned, right? They cover the axis. This is X, this is Y. On the 2D plane, Y is just above X and offset to the side. It's not actually going into the space, into the distance, but it's going up and then to the side. So that I have this going up and then it goes to the side, meaning it still transitions on this axis. It doesn't go behind my cube. And then I have these weird looking shapes. This is so weird. This is way too far. How would this even work? And I'm unfolding the space. Usually I do this in reverse, and it's much easier in reverse. Okay, this goes up, this goes there, this goes there. Does this even work? Okay, I can't even. I have no idea. I would believe it works, but I don't think it works. It's weird. Okay, here's another example. Thinking about the profile of a face, and we all know this. It's a 3D volume, so the curve is part of the 3D volume. If I take this thing and I rotate this thing into space as a two-dimensional something, the entire thing would flatten out. And so I would have the distance basically shortened. I could shorten this even more and basically have a very flat face. Well, in this case it's very weird, and I still have certain points that want to be covered. And this is where I'm foreshortening a very complex curve. I'm trying. So I'm trying. Oh god. And you get the idea, right? I'm pretty sure you get the idea. If I rotate this thing completely over so that I have the 90 degrees, I would have my face, and this line that starts at this point and goes to this point basically runs through my face, completely straight. Okay, let's see. Oh, no, you didn't post it. When you posted something, let me know. Something else about foreshortening. When you have your thing, basically I'm dancing on a circle, 180-degree circle. Technically, this is like your wristwatch. You have your 12, you have your 6, you have your 9, and you have your 3. But basically in perspective. So when the box that I have is basically pointing at the 3, and technically it's not even pointing at the 3, it would point somewhat to the 2. If I have something inside my plane, a curve like this, and I rotate the plane so that it points to the 3 or the 4 or the 5 or the 6, I still have this line, right? I still have the curve. As it transitions closer to the 6, where I have a very foreshortened plane, I still have these points. And between, I have my foreshortened curve. If this is the planes that are very foreshortened, these are the tricky ones. I can have a plane that basically points directly at me. And then I still have my curve. And between this, these things are different directions. And in the entire thing, I have rotation. And I do have rotation about lines, squares and planes, so that they turn into lines anyway. And this too, it translates back to when you have your human arms and stuff, they always point in a direction. And that using it this way, it makes so much sense. Whatever pose the body can do, whatever pose his hands can do, it's just to look at things and then find out where they point. 6 and 9, 6 and 9. What? I'm confused. I'm confused. To throw something on top, when you are able to draw cubes in different directions, like your wristwatch, clock, dancing, handle things, it will be infinitesimal. Is that a word? It will become so much easier to construct and draw poses from your own mind, because every piece is just taking up a certain direction on your wristwatch that basically points in a direction. And in this case, I can basically take a point, draw a circle around it, say there's 12, there's 3, there's 6, and there's 9. And now tell me where the hip is pointing. It's a box. It still is a box. So the side, it points to the 3, the front is pointing to the 6, and that is the thing, right? So when I have something else like legs, and I kind of have this point, and then I have this radius, where this is my 12, there's my 3, there's my 6. And then I can point my cube down like this. What? Railroad train, what is going on? What train is this? What train is this? Thanks for the raid, and Sammy, thanks for the bits, much appreciated. You're the best. What's up, Fiendling, Rulu, Exo? What's up, you guys? How's Sunday? Oh, I gotta take a drink. Your train. How did I not see you live? Thanks for the host. No, raid. It's a raid. I'm getting confused. So I was saying that knowing how to draw the cubes lets you construct things easier. Just because the cube is a 3D volume and it does point into space, so it follows directions. The next step really is looking at reference and then finding out what cube represents what. So I start with the torso, and I'm kind of just drawing a square because it makes sense. And the body pieces, they all have different orientations. It's not just straight, and then you have a stick. It doesn't work like this. This is a no-go, flat, bad gesture. And having gesture in your drawings, a little bit body language, it will definitely lift up the aesthetic appeal of your drawings. And I can't say quality, but it definitely makes things appealing. So her arm is a cylinder. In this case, it's pointing down and it's standing on the ground. Between my cylinders, I have angle difference. It doesn't go straight. It still might not be accurate. Otherwise, there's another arm which is pointing forward in a way, and the lower arm also pointing forward. Two cylinders. Otherwise, two boxes that represent the body part in its proportions and direction. So again, knowing how to draw cubes, that is the basic exercises. Knowing how to draw cubes and pointing cubes and cylinders in different directions. Remember your clock watch thing. 12, 3, 6, 9. Build your plane. Turn this into a box. Otherwise, turn things into cylinders, where you have a lot of cylinder things on your circle. And then forming these into cylinders. Every cylinder is a valid position for any sort of arm or leg. It still works. It could make a difference if I say there's my leg, so I gotta make it look like a leg. Otherwise, it could be anything. This is where a little bit anatomy or knowing how to draw your cubes away, get your cubes away from looking too cubical. It makes sense, and this is still there is enough there to help me identify this as a foot. There's a heel, there's an ankle, there's a toe, maybe there's more toes like sticking out, 10 of those beautiful mutations. And still I can basically draw a pose for an arm or leg in any of these directions. Knowing how to do this, simple stuff, rotating cylinders, boxes, and space. It's a kind of direct line, and it's a free call, right? 0800, I want to be a master, so I gotta practice this. Call in the next 10 minutes, and you get a free mug. In a very stupid way. Oh God. Oh God. Any questions? Am I still making sense? Not too drunk on lines. Always get drunk on lines. Something I'm trying to figure out at the moment is, and I made these weird things. When I look at arms, they have a certain. The surface itself has a certain direction, and that is where I have to balance my lines, the length, and its angle. This one. What do you mean you want this? Take a screenshot, Kappa. Do you mean you want me to draw it? You say tackle as it's supposed to be difficult. Har 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 har. I probably drew this before a couple of times. Otherwise, there is a margin of error and a margin of precision that I just don't really care about. So I would draw this like I always draw my studies. I don't even look for the gesture as such. I would look for interesting pieces that stand out because of the surface. Let's say it's so weird. When I look at this picture, there are at least 1, 2, 3 things that stand out to me individually. Like, it's my personal preference. It is my brain that says there is a detail I want you to look at. When you look at this, you will see something entirely different. You may not even notice. I don't even know what I notice, but there is a strength. It sounds weird. There is a kick in this arm, in the entire surface. It's not about the values, it's not about the lines, but how this all comes together. There is a very strong expression in this arm, in the surface. The same for this leg, and this it depends on the surface because of how I see the surface, and that is something I'm making contact with this visual information. And it's like you have a flood of water coming into your face, and there's different fishes in the water, and you only go yup, 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 and nom, nom, nom when the fish is coming by that you want to eat. Right? It's a very selective way. This arm, this surface, it's awesome. And I don't know why, but I know the surface is awesome. And like, usually nobody ever told me surfaces look awesome because they don't see this. They don't look at it this way. They may see the boobs and the overall sexual attractiveness, but then I'm like, oh my god, it's so awesome, right? And it's not like I'm looking at weird body parts. And the way the surface looks, it's so weird. It's about the surface, basically how the surface is shown. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But that is what I look at. I like the surface. I like when objects, body parts, hands, arms, when the perspective is laid out so that the surface, the person itself, the thing that is in the drawing is making contact with the space and the viewer. And we have this if technically this arm is pointing down. So if I give her a different arm pose and I stretch it towards the camera, she is making contact. Depending on how I portray this or show this, visualize this, it will create something awesome. Otherwise, it will create something else. And I know simple stupid drawings. I know this. I have a comic. On the back of the cover there is an ad, and in the ad there is a tiny drawing in the corner of this weird looking robot guy, and he's quite stylish. He's quite stylish. And he has two guns, and he's like holding the guns into the camera, like into your face basically. And like, no joke, when I was a kid, this drawing was the marvel of everything else because the way it showed the space, the way it showed the perspective, everything. I was sitting there like, I need this. I want to do this. I want to know how this works. And I failed because I was still too young to really get. But still, the visual image is made up out of so many different jigsaw pieces and puzzles and weird things. And for me, I never really enjoyed just making a blatant copy of this. And I stylize because certain compartments, and this is where my perception of something has to be, I have to be aware of this. Because that is something, it resonates with me preferentially or personally, I don't even know. And it's not something where other people, they don't see this. I know that they don't see this because they would look at other things. It's obvious. We all look at different things. But still, I take only these few things. And again, when it comes to the artworks that I see, one of these things, or a couple of these things relate to 3D. And these are the things that I don't even give a shit about the rest. Like, I break this down so much so that I don't just know what I want to draw. Basically, that's the point. Like, I find out what art I want to make and what really fascinates me about my art. And this is, you make contact with yourself. because you find yourself in this kind of way where you understand how things resonate, or basically how visual things resonate. And I like drawing the lady because obviously it's attractive. Oh, I like girls. Yeah, I like girls. So there are different reasons, right? And again, when it comes to arts, I don't just want to replicate the sexual attractiveness. Like, not at all, because that is not hard. And if like, there's things that I would never draw. And it's so easy for people to do it because they don't mind it. And I'm sitting there like getting all anxious because that is not the way I want to express myself. And so let's say I would have these artwork things, and part of this is just nipples, right? Drawing nude pussy females and all sexy, and I don't even know. Like, it doesn't appeal to me at all. And there's a couple of people that actually complain because they can't draw nipples or nude. Like, okay, you can do it at home, but please, you don't stream it. And for me, it's like I don't even pay much attention because it doesn't really appeal to me. And again, going back, this 3D stuff and knowing how to build form in space. Everything is form, everything is space. So having the fundamental knowledge of how to manipulate form, it lets you use this to manipulate the form and turn it into anatomy. You can turn it into fire. You can turn it into flowing water. It's the same stuff. It just depends on how you look at things. And still, the basic really is understand how to make geometry, and then understand how to manipulate geometry. And then you understand or learn how to manipulate geometry and make it look like hands, you make it look like feet, you can make it look like cars, you can make it look like anything. Googie small. Oh, there we go. So what are your thoughts? Footprint. What are your thoughts? Oh, this is large. Can I zoom? Uh, first tip, big tip. Remember this. Ground plane. Ground plane. It will leave your things less floaty. I'm gonna take a screenshot and just. There is a difference in how we perceive things. So the moment you add a ground plane, I gotta resize this. You have your thing is grounded into space, and so it depends on do you just draw the square or do you think about one point perspective? And I think about one point perspective because these two lines, they have an angle that will eventually meet. I don't think about the point, I think about the line and its angle. So again, if I keep these more or less parallel, you still have the effect of the one point perspective. And this will give your entire thing a different feel because it's not floating anymore. Oh, my OBS, can I mute, quick, mute. Remove this too. Stop streaming. Oh shit, doesn't work. But making them less floaty, you have this one. Give it just a little bit more plain. It's the same thing. It's just you don't have a flat wall, but you basically have a leaning on the wall, and this would create a shadow. You can even draw the shadow instead of just drawing. And then here's the difference. You can do it this way, but this will flatten out the space. You should do it this way because you have a one-point perspective. And there's a difference. Even this edge is not connected to your thing, but it's still, your knees are sitting on the same ground plane. Doesn't work with this one, but I mean, the flying one is definitely, she's making contact, boob touch. She's touching the butts. It's butt play. If you want to go on top, you can do a little bit of shading when you know it's gonna overlap, and she's actually making contact with the ground. Oops. Oops. This is what I would recommend. It always works. Whatever form, whatever shape you have, put it on a ground plane and my belly. Have you tried to draw faces? Otherwise, keep it simple. I can't draw faces. Not like I want to. Let's see. Let's go back. I keep this very simple. I look at the structure. I analyze the structure. Even this one. Structure analysis. Very scientific, very academic. And still, if you look at most of these are very simple. And I try to go for the volume. And then I give it like these weird looking, it's not even a face. There's supposed to be a face. And then I may make it like this. It's very simplified. I still look for a structure. So when I have something like this on the front, I would have something similar on the 3/4 views. Let's say this kind of square or this indent is this one. So I have the same lines. This goes down for the forehead, then it goes back, and then it comes forward. It goes back, it comes forward, it goes down. Then it goes to the chin. I would like to draw faces. I mean, yeah, but still, I can't. So I have to analyze my own way, which is it's a little bit complex. But still, I go step by step. And figuring out the placement, proportions, the space between nose, eyes, lips, and outside of the face, that is something you have to analyze. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. It makes it easier. It makes it simple. It makes it less stressful. And I'm talking about not really attempting to draw any sort of crazy realistic face. It doesn't matter. Keep it very simple. My face shape still builds on this. I have 1, 2, 3 lines, 2 on the side, and then it goes across. And I can turn this into, I can, transition this and keep it more realistic, keep it more simple, keep it more cartoony. And it works like this, right? Big eyes, super cartoony face. If I put in a more elaborate, detailed structure, you get a different feel for the face, even though in its simple state. It's still, the moment I put in eyes like this, the entire thing actually gets the character, gets a feel for what's actually going on, and it makes it everything more complex. It's still super simple. Like, it doesn't really contain much, there's no complexity. I keep it simple like this, and I figure out the spaces, the proportions, the placement. How high do I need to put my lips? How high do I have my jawbone? Where's my cheekbones? Where's my forehead, temple? This goes up, eye socket. And then I slowly transition that. But first I need to understand the basics. So that I have to be able to at least make a simple, stupid cartoon face and understand the placement between these, the proportions, relative or otherwise. And I like drawing simple faces. The thing is, I'm looking for the learning experience always, right? It's like you toss in like a little stone into the lake, and you wait, you kind of observe what kind of blob or what kind of splash it makes. And then it's not really a lake, right? It sometimes it splashes in terms of farts or wind, or maybe it's sparkling rainbow fairies, So make the experiment. Don't set yourself out where you basically in your brain you're set out to create a specific kind of artworks that's meant to be like this and it's only supposed to be like this. I don't have this. I leave it blank and I create wherever my creation leads me. For the sake of learning, this is a very it's like I'm actually being creative, right? I'm not really studying. I'm studying, but I'm trying to be creative, and I just make my potato, and then I try to make stuff, and I see where this leads. And there is a world to be discovered in this, because you can discover your own style. You can discover things that you actually like to draw. And again, we have the spectrum between cartoon style and real. Don't really care about cartoon. Like too much cartoon is I like realism, but I don't really care. So my spectrum of what I want to draw is in all of this. It's a mixture and a kind of transition between what is cartoon and simple and cute and what is semi-realistic and awesome and awesome. And I don't really set myself out. Like I said, I leave it open. I experiment so that I can basically bounce between whatever I draw, and then when I have something, I look at it and I say, this is this, and this is too cute, it doesn't appear. So I find out slowly by eliminating what I don't like and what I don't want to draw. It lets you get closer to what you really, really, really want to draw. And there is a marvel in this, because we have our creativity and there is so much magic in this, right? And we all want to draw like these fascinating characters that basically we want to create something that is relatable to every other human being. And let's say we can make a character that is so awesome, so appealing, and so representative, and so deep in its own philosophy and visual representation that we connect, and it's like, wow, we all want this. And still eliminating the things that you don't want to draw, that is the point. Don't set yourself out to just saying, I want this and I only want this. This is like you become trapped, literally, between your own art ideals of what you want, and it's crushing you, because everything else, this is what you want, yes, and this is no, and it's not a happy place. I know this. I know this. I know this too well. And still making the experiment, I know that within my experimentation I still have like the most realm of awesome. This is what I want. This is why I practice like 10 years. When I locate all of these different things in my experiments, I may not realize the ideas that I actually want to make, but I am getting closer to understand the kind of visual style that I want to give my artworks by basically creating artworks and trying to realize what I want out of them, and then slowly transitioning to where I make the experiment, and then instead of making the experiment, I create something where I say, this is the recipe and this is my design, and it is by design that it is this way and not any other way. And again, you have to have, in a way, you need the clarity. You have to have the creativity, which is a given, because we are creative by birth, right? We don't have to do anything. We just need a kind of tool. We have to have a kind of thing that lets us express these things. There we go back to drawing, right? There we go back. I think that this kind of stuff, like where artists, they think in images, they want to only make this, it becomes very difficult to basically make the attempt. And that too is where we are confronted and conflicted with ourselves and our own expectations and of what we want and what we can and cannot do. If we have no expectations, like I can draw anything and be happy, right? But that doesn't work because I have expectations. On the other side, if I expect to express my ideas in a certain quality, I need a certain amount of skill. And if I want to draw people and faces and birds and make them look nice, there may be something required that is considered to be a skill. It's not just artsy-fartsy and random. It doesn't depend on talent. It doesn't run on only creativity. It has to be, constructed. Basically, when you have like the randomness of everything and you have to funnel this into a kind of system in place, and then you can have like the pressure valve and basically determine how much you let through. And then you have the hose, and you can decide what kind of shape does your hose actually have. Could be a triangle. And this is where the our creativity and all the random chaos that we may want to express becomes utilized in terms of, I want to draw fine arts, I want to paint, I want to draw watercolors, I want to draw with gouache, I want to draw landscapes, I want to draw characters, I want to draw illustrations, I want to draw cute stuff, I want to draw animes, I want to draw semi-realistic, I want to hatch, I want to shade, I want to do etc, etc, etc. I mean, you gotta deal with your anger. I can only say analyze, and technically somewhere between you just drawing and you realizing you're angry, there is the perception of buried. And you gotta ask yourself, why are you angry? Don't just be angry. If you want to just be angry, that's fine. Otherwise, you have the choice and the free will to ask yourself, what are you angry for? Why are you angry? And then looking at this thing that creates this anger, that is something you have to deal with. It's a stare down contest. Don't flinch. If you flinch, you escape. So don't flinch. And I to do this, I don't like being angry. Even though it's human and it's normal, and I still have the choice to accept whatever is normal or whatever there is and consider this to be, oh yeah, it's just the way I am. It's normal and it's human and it's part of life. No, no. I'm sitting there in whatever I feel, and then I'm analyzing it because why not? You know, I could be angry. I could be angry because I'm still bad at drawing and can't really express myself. So I'm stressing myself out, and it doesn't always feel good, but I have to keep on. Can't really let down, but still, there's no point in being angry. Just gotta accept. My pleasure for footprint, print food. Yes, that's 3D printed food. Delicious. As long as I'm making sense, I gotta write down the time for break work. I think often enough it is the frustration of basically these impulses of anger and anguish and rage that make us kinda go away from the actual learning experience. So when we make the drawing, that is the worst drawing that we've ever made, and we would just look at it and we would completely rage, right? And we would focus on the drawing and basically choke the drawing and in anger and ask it, why are you so bad? It is me and I and myself that made the drawing, right? It is my skill, it is my ability that produced this drawing. Why am I angry? What am I really angry for? Why am I frustrated? The thing is that in between the input and the output, there is the ability. If I don't have this, I cannot do. Right? It is the ability, the basic ability to comprehend stuff, to learn, to read, to speak, to write. I gotta even comprehend. I gotta have an ability to turn on my computer. So, um, I mean, we always want, right? We always want to do, and we want to create the best artworks, and then we just find ourselves having no ability. Basically, we don't even notice not having the ability. But we realize this when we look at our drawing and we yell at our drawing and say, why are you so bad? What we should do is basically, in silence, like the Zen monk, look at ourselves and look at what ability we have, what ability we need, what ability we want. And then again, look at our drawing again, so it may motivate us to actually to, the drawing itself, there's always something good in the drawing. There's always something bad. Yet the rage just kicks in. What you should be doing is analyze the wrong, analyze the right, and then proceed on towards the next drawing. And again, it's not about your set fixed idea, it's about the experiments. And you will get closer. And still what you have to manage is your rage. Because it is not creative, and rage does not help to make art. It does not help to make, it doesn't even help to learn. So that would be interesting if rage, if like the state of rage or whatever brain chemistry is released would actually increase the learning ability of our brain. that would be that would be quite the world. I mean, it basically is contradictory to intelligence, because it kinda does remove any ability to think clearly, to be rational. And there we go off it, like the fire spitting dragon. I had enough frustration, and still the frustration, whatever rage I had, I kept on going because I wanted to. I wanted this. I wanted to draw so badly. And still, it kept me going for the past 10, 7, 8, 9, 6 years. I mean, what else am I gonna do with my time? Waste it on video games? Hard to burn acid stuff. Also, self-analysis. It's not about self-criticism and being critical with yourself. It is analyzing yourself. That too comes into play when you analyze the right and wrong in your artworks. Video games, yes, those things. And I played some video games, and I played video games before I went to bed, 9 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, messed up sleep schedule. Something something you have to believe is that you can. It's not about talent. That's it. It's like when I look at myself draw, like the stuff that I draw and I know and I basically teach, and how surprising this could be if I meet my younger self, my 20-year-old self, um, my jaw would drop, literally. And my younger self had no idea about creativity of any kind. Like I had a complete disconnect. But then again, it's not about me, it's not about myself, it's about my brain. Basically, the brain, the mind, and the consciousness. And if I fill my brain, this is where like I became eventually so active in the ways that I thought about stuff and I analyzed stuff. If you don't lose sight of your goal and you actually analyze this and you break it down into simple, manageable bits and pieces of knowledge and information, you can learn and study these. And again, we had this meeting that about the puzzle pieces. Where is the jigsaw puzzle? There are always a couple of pieces that are more interesting. And one piece that I studied the most, it was not the anatomy, it was not about female form, it was purely how to 3D illusion and then transition this to create form that is sensible. And then transition to what you can learn anything. I mean, literally, we can learn anything. And since it doesn't depend on my ability to science like physics and quarks and quantums or mathematics, you can learn this. Just like we can learn, it's like learning how to play the instrument. You can learn the guitar, you can learn the piano, and then it depends all on you. It's up to you and your own connection to your own creativity to be the next Beethoven or the next Mozart, so that you can make your own music. And it should be about making your own music and not just playing songs from some people that are long dead, or I don't even know, classic songs. And I don't enjoy playing songs at all. I never learn songs because it's not what I want. I learn the instrument to make my own stuff. And when it comes to music, I don't really analyze music that much, but I do analyze music so that I can, figure out how to play the music I want to play. And that too, it requires a certain ability. Come on, reference. Time. Am I still making sense? Yeah, Yeah, I know, right? I know, right? And still, there are people that can't. They don't really know how to make their own music. And again, it's something I would analyze. Let's say you saying that you do hate this and you realize that you hate this, but you wonder why. And for me, it's myself, as in my own self, wants to express itself. And it can't do this, it can't do it, express itself by playing other people's music. Just like I can't express myself by copying reference or basically drawing like the reference. I have to make my own stuff. It has to be influenced by the way I am, the way I see things, the way I feel, the way I think, the way I perceive. And that has to be part of the music. It has to be part of the artworks. Otherwise, it's just, what is it? It's a hollow reflection that has no substance, which in all artworks in the world of arts and music, it's fine. It's not artworks that I have to look at. Uh, you do your own thing. Like, people do their own stuff. People make weird arts. It's fine. I don't have to see it. I don't have to like it. It's like, just gotta let it be. So there are plenty of music that I don't like. Otherwise, yeah. So it's similar to um, there's no appeal for me to draw actually nude stuff, like naked people, as in no bra, and you could see the nipples. And there is something in myself, in my inner kind of thing, that is repulsive, where I know this is not the way. For me, this is not the way. So I get it, right? I don't really would say I hate this, but myself and my inner being is uh, making me see or feel or perceive that this is not the way. And I don't need to think or do much. I just gotta accept this and let it be and be okay with this, right? That's how it is. Yes, yes. I like have to do something that entirely comes from me. Yes, so much yes. And that too is something where I say I want to draw and I want to understand this. From understanding and from the knowledge comes the control. And even though control is a weird word, but the difference is when you practice piano for 10 years, you are able to control the instrument. Like you can control the most precise little tiny things. Like the people that make watches. You have the ability to basically dance on the keys and make it sound like marvelous stuff. Then the same stuff works for the artworks. If you learn the instrument, learn the tool, learn the fundamentals, learn how it works, and then the moment your brain is not busy with learning, but with only knowing and understanding, you are not. It's like you're teleporting. You're teleporting through time and space, and you are in all places at once. Like the way I would see this is you have the sea. It's like the ocean, and this is your mind, right? And your mind, the moment you fill your mind with information, it starts to grow. And so when you practice the piano for 10 years, you are covering the entire ocean of knowledge that is there to learn for the piano. As in, you know how to move your fingers, you know the scales, you know how to transition. You're basically able to play very fast. And you can create new things and you can be completely free. And we see this. We see this in people, right? When they are basically so into this, whatever they are doing, or they basically want because their brain, the way their brain thinks, it's thinking in terms of visualness, of visual. I think in lines. I think in lines, in planes, in triangles. And when I do this, when I draw, it basically cascades down. It is a flow. it is a complete, very soothing flow. It doesn't go jaggedy or random. It's completely soothing, and it's like a string that just goes on and on and on and on. It's a smooth ride. And then again, when I'm riding on my train and something happens, where I basically can't proceed, you're basically at a stop. And then when I play music on my guitar and I notice I can't do chords, I can't transition between the frets, I'm at a stop. And then I'd rather go back to where I can be free in my music making and transition to transition to places where I'm out of my comfort zone slowly. And that too, I do this with drawing. So I stay within I basically make a comfort zone first. And that is my base. It's my base of operations. It's the base where I build my foundation, and then I transition. And I basically lean myself so far out the window that I should be falling. And I really do understand not wanting to play somebody else's music. There's literally no appeal. The music that people make is awesome. It's really awesome. And let's say I would like to play this, but I wouldn't enjoy learning because it's somebody else's stuff. And all you really learn by basically music, you learn to press the button or pull the string in the right moment. It's like drawing by numbers, and there's no real learning done. It's kind of like tracing when it comes to drawing. You learn to make the right mark in the right place because it's already there. You just got to make it again. So, and then you repeat the process until you're able to play the tune or the song in the right speed. And you don't mess up your finger placements. When it comes to the drawing parts, I like the understanding. I like to really know how it works, and it doesn't matter if it's just a cube. Uh, I remember this being like the trickiest stuff, and actually just figuring out how to proceed into space with the perspective. And knowing how this works effectively, I mean, I remember the struggle. It cost me years or months to figure out I mean, it's not even simple. It's not about the box. It's about the space. And basically, between every line, there is a relationship. So you can say the cube has 1, 2, 3 planes, and the relationships are basically the same. So any relationship is just a copy of the first. So you have your basic cube, and again, I analyzed this. There's horizontal flow, there's vertical flow. These are 4 compartments of 4 pieces. 2 of these, they have a relationship. These 2 and these 2. If they remain parallel, no space, basically no perspective distortion. The moment one of these lines collapses, as in it's changing its angle from something like this, where these are still parallel, to this, it will create the vanishing point in one way or the other. If I have this one and I spread this across, it will create the vanishing point because they will suddenly meet. They will not go parallel anymore. That too is something where I just analyze the relationship, and I can go from basically no perspective to one point perspective in the blink of an eye by just changing one angle. Instead of there's your frame, there's your point, there's your grid, now have fun with your one point perspective. It was like, fuck this. I could just if perspective grids had a face, and I would never bully or punch somebody, but I would punch perspective grids in the face. Oh, it's so funny. GG or North? What's up? How do I call you? What's up, Marlies? How's your Sunday? And like, it's knowing this, and I always find a kind of way to utilize things. It's not just drawing the box, but what can I do with drawing the box? So again, it's not about the box, but it's about understanding 3D, space, form, direction in space. And if going from direction in space, I can transition to where I have a box or a square, and I understand this as my arm, which is literally, it's two squares in directions or in perspective, in space, in something. So if I have another square like this, right, I have another square like this, I can turn this into a cylinder. And again, I have directions, basically direction in space of things and stuff. You should learn the fundamentals, and it's basically what I preach this. Learn the fundamentals, learn cubes, find out what you want to draw. Then study this. Break it down into shapes. Otherwise, fundamentals. The actual foundation. Kind of like find out what artworks you want to make. And then you will be represented with certain things you have to learn. You break down these things into their fundamentals, and then you study these fundamentals of these certain things, and you will slowly progress and improve towards the artworks that you want to make. It's not about the subject. Like, it's not about drawing hands or feet or ears or noses. It's keeping the fundamentals of art or drawing, if you're still learning, keep them applied to whatever subject. And my subject is the female body, or basically shoulders, this kind of thing. No, this shoulder stuff. But I don't ignore the fundamentals, like lines, perspective, space, shapes, form, and this kind of stuff. So when I make a drawing, basically when I make a study, I'm already analyzing on the go the parts that are wrong, and I figure out why they are wrong on the fly. It may not present me with a solution, but I think about this stuff constantly. Copying being draw from reference. That is true. And it's not about copying as in making a perfect copy. And look at the way I draw the reference. I'm taking bits and pieces because these are the bits and pieces that I know and want. Oh, yeah. It's like a selectiveness. I am selective. And let's say I wouldn't know more about what I want to learn if I just make a copy. That is the thing. Because the way I operate is not by just making a copy, which is the most common, easy thing to do. But when I do this, when I draw, I have these 2 points, right? This is transitioning to my collarbone, and it already goes into space. I have to know that the flat space is basically going to the side. My collarbone is at an angle. This is transitioning in a kind of smooth curve. This goes up. There's a plane for my neck. And I have to understand the space. Going from this point, I have my shoulder joint. From this point, I can transition into all directions into my space. And this being, I have my circle, which again is my 12, my 3, my 6, my 9. And this is my cylinder, arm pointing down. But I want to go forward into space. I want to go sideways into space. I want to go in between into space. Because my arm can do this, right? My arm can take up all of these positions. And this is what I want to know and understand. On top of like the surface being, this is technically straight, so this, if there is a different line at this place, it has to go across the boobs, right? There are different lines that go across the body like this. My arm is round. So everything's of these, they also are round. And then again, I have, this is my role, this is my orientation. I can change this and say maybe it has an angle like this. It's still following the same direction, but at a different inclination. And that too is something I had to understand. Like, I really had to figure this out. Because it literally is the same direction, and I can just stick another plane onto this one and have two, right? And still between I have 90 degrees. Otherwise, I can still draw this one and turn it into a box. And again, from any of these points, I can have an arc. I can have a circle. And again, I can transition into any and all directions into space. This kind of stuff is what I wanted, what I had to know, and it is by no means something that I received into my brain by copying or basically reading books. Definitely not copying. This is a very hardcore scientific way of thinking and analyzing. And for me, it was kind of natural. I had to do it this way. It wasn't really a choice. I came about this by slowly progressing step by step by step. But at any point, I was always constantly thinking and analyzing from, this is the way I draw it, and this is what I want to draw, and then I had to analyze basically how to draw differently to make it suit my drawing, to make it suit my style, to actually draw it properly and then understand why it is proper, or why it works this way. And saying this, why things work or basically don't work, when I need a certain angle for a square, I have to keep the certain angle. If I don't keep this angle, it's wrong, right? And then I have to still analyze this, because even if this angle is not 90 degrees like this, there's still your cube and there's still your 90 degrees, which is like, what is even going on in the brain? Because there are 90-degree angles that are not 90-degree angles. Like this one, right? Technically, if you look at the first two lines that I drew, there's my 90-degree angle. This one. These other lines, they are not 90 degrees, like they're in between, and yet they are at 90 degrees. Because perspective. And if you look at it this way, you have two lines that cover 3D space. Think about it slowly, let it sink in. Every line reads 3D space. If you can read this, right? It's like, and this is like stuff that I had to analyze. And still, if the cube is rotating around this point, all that is happening is this: the big line goes to a different place, and then the small line follows. And I have basically the same cube, but it's basically basically dancing around the single point. It's weird stuff. Love it. Love it. This is what I analyze, right? So that I can slowly transitioning to drawing stuff. It's something. It's a science. It's a science. And at first, it's like a ton of information. And if you don't really think about it, information comes into play when you want it. And the moment you want the information because you notice something, oh, this is how it works, and this is what I need, and this is what I gotta think about, there is like a floodgate is being opened, and it's basically gushing down into your brain, into your face, and you get confused on something. It's hard to remember everything at once. Like, all the things that I spoke about in these 2 hours, you may not remember everything. And that too is like my way of analyzing the system, or the geometric breakdown stuff that I think about constantly, is very complex to anybody else that never thought about it this way. If you would be familiar with the kind of concept, the kind of thinking, it would be less complex. And at first it may appear complex, but eventually it's all logical. That too is weird. For the most part, the way I would draw or need to apply the lines is logical, because I have, let's say, I have the result that I need, and I reverse engineer this, and I come to basically 3D direction orientation is built on this is my guide. This is telling me where it actually goes. The second one is telling me the inclination, meaning is it a flat plane like this, or is the plane at an angle? We had this before. These two planes, they still run on the same direction. So there's one guide rail which is telling me the X, Y, Z's, and then I have two others that tell me the volume. Where would it go? Something. It's weird science. Let's say part of the reason why I did so many silent streams is the way my brain communicates information to me is much faster. I have to slow down when I have to basically entertain a stream. And in past week, I was pretty much absorbed, and I wanted to be in silence. Like literally, I didn't feel like listening to my own voice. Basically, having my brain in a place where it's about language and ABC. I wanted to keep my brain in a place where it's about lines, angles, direction, space, that kind of stuff, so that I can like the learning becomes increased, and that is very much like the experience gain in video games, right? You can get a buff and get a boost, and the experience that you gain is just so much better and much stronger and more awesome. And so when I keep my brain in a realm where it's not about language for like 12, 16 hours a day, oh yes, I'm gonna have a nice XP boost, and I love it. I mean, it was pretty stressful, and I had this. I went to sleep for like 1 hour. I wanted to sleep for more, but I woke up after 1 hour and I was rejuvenated. It was so weird, and I was like, yeah, let's get up and draw. I was like draw until like 8 a.m. or something. If you have still a question, just let me. You can share your thoughts, and I always like the discussion. So share your thoughts. If things don't make sense, if you have questions, it doesn't matter. Stupid questions, any sort of questions, meant to help you understand something. So always ask your questions. And some people may think you're stupid, or they consider questions stupid. No such thing. No such thing. If you want to know something, you gotta ask the questions. And yeah, fuck what other people think, for the most part. You shouldn't ask a question twice or three times, otherwise we do get the point. And I really don't mind questions. Don't ask for my age. That's a secret until it's my birthday, which is soon. Do you have like a word where you go, for sure is the next shit? Do you mean like more in-depth analysis for the anatomy and stuff? No. I will do this, like in the more or less near future. I would try to have more anatomy kind of focused, figure drawing kind of focused streams in a way where I would analyze certain body parts, certain anatomy things, and basically I would like to cover the entire body some kind of way. For the most part, it's still very loose. Like when I talk about stuff, I don't really go in depth. I always go in depth about the fundamentals. every time, pretty much. I always talk about cubes and planes instead of the actual anatomy. But it's something I want to do. It's future plans. Could could totally, I could make it a sub goal if I want to be a squirrel. Yeah, there's some future plans. Yes, but nice. Still, they suck. Breathing and drinking is bad. Excuse the noise. Yeah. Oh god, water in my lungs. How did that sound? Excuse me. Oh, yeah, I drowned. Oh, some accidental waterboarding there. Go wake up, I will not drink you anymore. Oh, what an adventure. Jesus Christ. It happens, right? It happens. Gotta learn how to drink. I can draw, yeah. I can draw and teach drawing and stuff. And I still fail at drinking. Success. I should end the VOD at this point. If I will turn the talking that I had into a VOD, and I should end it at my choking. Just for the comedicness. Anyway, let's go back to drawing. Any questions? Any other questions? Yeah, that made my day. Lol. Here's something else. This is my way of thinking for the anatomy of I'm gonna find the words. For the shoulder, torso, and neck. I mean, I can make you a master. If you just want to be a good artist, that's fine. If you want to be really good, that's okay too. But if you want to be a master, I still give you thumbs up. If that's okay, but I don't have to make you a master, but I would like to. If you want to, lol. So, quick jump over to some anatomy analysis. The basic part is, and I'm looking at the surface, the 3D form that it is expanding between shoulders, basically the middle part of your boobs, the collarbone, 2 places at the neck, and where the face is attached. This is in space. Like, it's a 3D kind of thing. Imagine this to be a lake. It has a very weird shape. It's not just completely flat and linear. So there are squares. For my shoulder, I have squares. The front chest part, basically above boobs, has a certain inclination, as opposed to the inclination or direction of shoulders. And I'm already using 2 different squares for the shoulders because I get confused. So again, continuing, the neck goes down, obviously, but it also goes back. And then it transitions towards the trapezius, where this one would actually go across and then fall back, so it goes behind, and that is something very weird. So directional wise, as in we have my 12, 3, 3, 6, and 9, and the clock handles, we have the collarbone. We have 2 parts of surface for the neck, and this is already weird because I'm basically drawing a triangle. What I really have is a plane that is twisted into space. It's pointing away from me. The neck itself is at an angle, so from the side I would have the dish, and my neck is not going straight, so it has an angle. right? In the line that I just draw like this, you can't really say where these points are, because you would say the line is flat and these 2 points, they sit on one axis, but they don't. So there is an offset between these points, and I have to keep this in mind, which is weird. So there is something else from the neck going down, and it basically goes this way, which is this kind of stuff. It goes from this point and it goes down. It doesn't go back, but it connects to this point. This is the one. This is what I'm looking at. And this is a good separation between basically the trapezius that is sitting behind the neck. And in some reference pictures you can see the separation between this. And then there's a triangle between these, and still the surface goes across, or this weird muscle that goes across. So directional wise, there is a crazy amount. I have shoulders that don't just, sure, the shoulders may visually just go to the side, flat, otherwise the shoulders, they do come forward. And then they kind of go down, so the inclination of these is more heavy. This is very heavy. So if this arm would actually bend backwards, I would see the back plane like this. This one is connecting to the trapezius. And again, I have parts that point this way, transition around, and then basically point back. I have, what is this? The front plane of my chest. Then this transitions basically to armpits left and right. And again, the direction is facing this way. This transitions down towards the boobs. The nipple is a pointing device. In case you ever wonder, right? When you have your circle, wherever the nipple is, there's the boob pointing. So I look for, it tells you things, right? So the way the boob is attached to the body, it's not completely sideways, it's not completely up. So it follows the inclination of your torso. There's your collarbone, there's your shoulder, and again I have this top plane for the shoulder from the profile view, which translates to basically this one or this one. It's very extreme angled in this case. Usually it can be more flat, but otherwise, so again, boobs, they have a certain forward direction and they have a certain up direction. Also, they don't really point completely to the side or to the front, but they point in between. Sides, I have one drawing. Right? This one. Boob sides. So the direction, and we have the plane. Oh, burps. So I have my belly from the drawing. So there's my first plane, there's the other plane. The direction of my boobs, in this case, the side of the torso is at an angle. And the boobs would follow. So that if there is an arrow attached to my boobs, it would point this way. It's very extreme, but otherwise it would follow the ipples. This is definitely completely cross-eyed, right? But you get the point. If you do it on top of the face, it's eyes, right? If you do it down there, it's something else. Weird, right? It's definitely weird. Never draw eyes on a torso. This will have a different context. Careful. Careful. Where's my diagram? So there is a lot of stuff that I have to analyze. And again, looking at it from far away, there is a surface that comes from the center. It covers across the shoulder circles. And I can turn this into an arrow to basically show me the direction of the surface. Even though this is, I read it like going back, right? I'm reading the shoulders still coming apart from my original direction and then going off at a different angle. And this is the way I analyze. Even when I have this curve connecting to the neck, at first it comes from behind, then it shoots across to the chest, to the collarbone, and transitions around the corner, where this one covers 90 degrees, and then it connects to the torso, the neck, and goes up. And there's still my error. And this is how I read surfaces. Like, what is my brain doing? I look at something like this, we all see the same, and my brain goes like, oh look, there is a snake that wiggles around the shoulders and then does something like this and then goes across the neck and sits below the face. Otherwise, there's a different snake that comes from there and then wiggles itself around arms. This transitions. It's weird. So I kind of got into this reading. I don't know where this comes from. Before I started drawing, and it was kind of fueled by me doing 3D, because I had geometry that had edge flow. And when you have like your weird looking geometries, and you kind of build things from triangles, and even doing this where you always have horizontal flow and vertical flow, and then between this you still may have different things that just come into play, because why not, you know? So I'm destroying the flow that comes from the top by changing its direction for whatever reason. And then still it's the same surface, but it's just differently visualized. I don't know. So this is something that I don't get from just values. And we talked earlier about values. I talked about values earlier, and how values would be insufficient. So that like this, all of this is showing me so much more information than any sort of values could ever do. I will show you. The way I have my hatching placed, it is constantly connected to a vanishing point. Every 2 lines on my ribbon, kind of weird looking thing, is connected to a vanishing point. These two lines, they would all meet at this vanishing point. And at some point they would move in a different place, because there's a transition between X, Y, and Z axis. And at some point they don't always connect to the certain point, but they have to, find different ways. So again, the form is moving through space, right? And therefore it has to find different vanishing points, logically. So again, there's the transition, right, between this vanishing point, and then there's my square, and it has this vanishing point. There's another square, and then this goes on, where again the form is transitioning, and as it moves, it has to find a new vanishing point, as this one continues into the depth of space, just like this one. If this continues and continues, it has to vanish at some point. Maybe it goes around the corner once or twice, and then it goes small, and it's gone. This is, I would never, there's no way you can get this stuff out of values. And I know why I like lines so much. Lines decipher the space. Values and painting and shading and coloring only applies a kind of appealing coat to whatever form you want to make. And then I would go in with the lines, because it's like, wow, space. Look, it's space. Look, emptiness. Yay. Unless. And showing the space, showing form, showing perspective, showing volume in artworks is always appealing. When I look at this, there is form and space and volume. And values do decipher this. Values show form. And still, I wanted lines. Like, I don't know why, but it's too obvious. And then if I just realize and remember how my brain reads form, like what I explained, lines, like yes please. Between the vertical and the horizontal, there's some weirdness going on. So the shoulder plane continues. There's your one arrow. This shoulder plane should technically, within my symmetry, this is my symmetry. The body comes at a curve like this. These 2 points connect to my shoulders, so there is a symmetry. They should point in the same direction. Or basically, how do you translate this? Like the symmetrical stuff, they shouldn't go off at random angles. That too is something I keep in mind. Then there is this kind of stuff that comes from the center. This goes up, and this is where it goes across. Basically, it falls back behind the body. And again, I'm just taking different kind of information from the chaos and putting it in a different frame. So there is a part. Here's the confusion. Basically, it's the intersection between the neck, trapezius, shoulder, and collarbone. Okay, the one thing that stands away from this is the trapezius, because it goes forward and then it transitions back. It's attached at the back side of the shoulder blade. So basically behind what we can't see right now. And then this transitions towards the shoulder. I have the shoulder plane in there. This should be at a different angle. This goes there. This is where it transitions down and basically goes around the corner. This is the first plane. The collarbone, it kind of goes like, depending on the pose or the perspective on the reference, it goes sideways or goes back, basically up or back. This is 1, 2, seems to be 4. This goes back. This continues towards the front. This one's weird still, but it kinda goes across trapezius and shoulder. So that said, I'm building my thing on a more linear approach. I can have an arc, otherwise I can have a line and everything is linear. I can bend this in different ways. I can still have a curve representing my body, and I can have the surface of my shoulders. Basically, I can decide how much do I want to point this back. Instead of usually pointing it to the side, what you would expect for arms and shoulders. I'm folding the form more than it's supposed to be. I'm bending the form. Technically, I can decide to draw the body and flip it in different ways, where the head would be this way, the shoulders would be completely pointing forward. This is your back, and the jaw, it would look like squished. And this too, it kind of works if you have a different perspective, because this one is definitely hunched over. Still, this goes back. This goes down. There's the gap. This goes down. Shoulders. There's something else. I noticed this yesterday and some other days. Between my two lines, and the way I use this, there is one of them is different. One of them is set for some reason. The other one gets the inclination. You can always say the one is the other. Technically, this is true. You can have, oops, that's the wrong one. Copy paste. The one can turn into the other. There is a relativity behind that relationship, and I have to know which one is which, because there is a difference, and I have no idea why. It can be reading direction, like if I look at this shape, right, it points to the back. One line was the first. Why was this the first one? And then there is the second one. Why is this the second one? And is it the same when so the first line is on the inside of my symmetry. When I drew this part, did I start with this line or did I do this one first? I should have done it, if there is a system, if there is a logic behind this, I should have used the line that is on the inside of my symmetry and probably have this designated as my guy. So now it's turning the wrong name. This should go back. What is this? There's wait. I'm getting this. One is on the edge. One line is on the far edge. One line is the far edge. The other line is on the one line is the contour. I got it. Okay. There is a logic. How do I see this? Outside first. Contour. And then I have the former. This is weird. Okay, does this apply? It should have been this one. Far edge first. This is the square. This is the cube. Definitely gotta keep an eye on this one. There's a logic. Even when usually you may not think about it this way or wouldn't even pay much attention. When I draw cubes, I do it, there may be a rhythm in how I place my lines, for the reason that this is the way my brain is processing this information. And there is information, and it is again presented horizontally and visually, horizontally and vertically. When I have a cube, the way I read its direction, and then I read the orientation, and then you read its height. That's it. Direction, orientation, height, and that is XYZ. If this goes different direction, different height, different orientation, there's my box. Nice. If I continue this, does this work? Is this it? Oh my god. Yeah, there's a rhythm. If I were to follow this one down, I have what? Technically it's the wrong way, but if I do it this way, and I connect it this way, and I have, what do I have? Wait, there it goes. Wait. X, X. This is technically, this has a different direction orientation. If you think about raw, jaw, pitch, and roll, what is the one axis that tips you forward? Tilt. Tilt. Direction, orientation, tilt. Technically, these are different. Wait, orientation along my directional axis. Technically, tilt and orientation should be changed. This is around this one. This is around this one. This is around this one. Yes. Okay, it's actually there is a oh my god, direction change axis, the rotation axis or something. This is direction, this is fine, this can be orientation, this can be tilt. If I change direction, I'm rotating around this axis. If I'm changing orientation, I'm rotating around the is tilt the axis. Technically, this only works by axis. Okay, T is changing. So weird. Like I'm going in my rotation of XYZ. I'm going one axis after another. Otherwise, can't make sense of things. Wait, any axis, any something can be affected in two ways, and that would determine why only two. Because one is set, the direction is the set one. Yeah. Okay. So at first I have my direction. Then I have, what do I have? Does this go up and down? When it goes left and right, it's in the same direction. Okay, this is one. It's Wait, that's it. Oh, okay, I got it. Override is affecting the tilts. I got it. At least in my brain. In a way, yes. In a way, yes. I'm figuring out which axis rotation is affecting which angle in which way, which leads to a rhythm that where you transition through 3D space in all axes, which essentially is like, it's weird. It is the weirdest thing. Uh, but it's so at first I can't go by linear systems, but eventually the linear system can't be used to make sense of dynamic systems. So you have to manipulate the linear system to suit the dynamic systems of the more chaotic systems. So basically, you still want to comprehend. So I'm I used to go by one, which was my direction, and I didn't even think about the actual orientation, because direction will always be the same. I can draw my square like this. I can draw my square like this. It's still pointing in the same direction. The surface itself, there are different there is horizontal flow and vertical flow. I'm reading alongside the length. Always. I don't read alongside the short plane. So when I have a cube like this, I read it up or I read it down. If I want to read something left or right, I have to give it the length, so it kind of turns into an arrow, like straight up. So direction. I remember coming into understanding orientation, because when I think about legs, and I'm already putting them in a certain orientation, so there's your hips, belly button, and there's your knee. You can rotate the entire leg around the long axis. That means your kneecap. And this is the way I make sense of things. So when I have the leg just standing down, I have my kneecap, and it's pointing in a certain direction in space. So the entire leg will change, or can change, when I change the direction. And then I would transition, basically take the square, put it to the side, give it a different direction on my thing, and change the anatomy. And then on top of this, I would have form that is basically transitioning from a forward pointing state to a side pointing state. So I have a transition in my angles from something like this to something like this. The leg can point forward and just basically point down. The leg can still rotate around the long axis. So the plane that used to be very flat suddenly turns and becomes more visible. Between the forward or the flat point towards this angled point, I have the transition. And again, I have this angle change. Technically, there's my knee. So the leg, this one, would follow and point in a different way. If the leg is completely pointing to the side, the knee would definitely point kind of down to the side, and there would be my calf. This is the orientation. Then the next one, that is, which one was this? No, wait. I have this one, I have this one, there's still one missing. Yeah, this one. This one. Which is basically the leg is now pointing down. Then the leg can point forward. The leg can basically have this kind of pose, it can have this kind of orientation, it can have this kind of orientation. This kind, any kind. And then from the leg basically pointing This one is, it's still the up plane of my leg is still, the knee is pointing up this way. So, where does it point? But that is the question. And again, I'm making sense of things. I know the leg is pointing down. The kneecap is my pointing device and is pointing forward. And then I look at this weird looking circle and I can point my knee in any of these directions. There is a limit to what the anatomy can do, yes, but still, if I could point my knee in this way, right? So I have the knee, and then I would change the anatomy, try to change the anatomy accordingly, and then the knee would go this way. Sweet. Still trying though. That is how I make sense of this. And I think I always had the one. Always had this one, which is this one. This goes up, goes sideways, goes this way, goes this way. What is that? I can't get the last one. It's already confusing me again. Wait, okay, I got it. One is confusing because it's. Where's my this? This is so weird the way my brain tries to make sense of this. Of this one, of this one. This one should be this one. Why is this one going down? And this is one axis. One axis is always escaping me. So I have my thing. This goes. This one is the confusing part because technically I can transition this like the clock handles. What I'm supposed to do, there's the axis that I'm missing because it goes up and down. So this one, there's a cone. There's a cone. Forward, down, forward, left. Yeah, and the next one, which I already have, is the orientation, which basically rotates around the long axis. So the actual direction to orientation. This should. Which one is the tilt? Oh wait, I don't get it. This one should be the tilt. This is the tilt. And I confused this one with the orientation. But I always had to. You always need to. And technically you always need to go one step ahead, otherwise things don't make sense. There's always two. Direction, down, orientation. there's my states. Up, down, left, right. Yes. Oh, yes, please. Oh my god. I love it. So for every line, there are 3 states. Every line to be really identified in 3D space. And I could just draw the grid. Oh my god. So you can see this line actually goes up, right? But you can't really see it from these lines. So every line could have 3 states, which is, does it point up in space? Does it go back into space? Basically like this one. Does it go forward into space? Like the other one. So the cylinder or the cube that is completely straight has no perspective. Basically, no top side is visible. If the cylinder, if this box would tilt back, I would see the bottom side, like this, which essentially describes the box that is tilted back, like this. Then, if the box tilts forward, I would see the top side, like this, basically. Like this. So every line has 3 states. Then these states, they work 2 of the axes. There's 5, technically 2, and then it can have a variation between left and right. And then on top of this, you still have the actual cube alignment, meaning if this was a cylinder and the cylinder had a top side, where's the top side pointing? And this again is my 12, there's my 3, there's my 6, and there's my 9. This is the orientation of my form. Technically, if this was a leg and I say this is my up plane, I would have a hip in this place. I would have a torso in this place. I would have a lower leg in this place, and I would have feet. And the mouth is tippy toes. There's my kneecap. There's my face. Awkward. Awkward. Lying on the ground. One of the axes is always given. This is now I'm flying through space. One of these axes is always given. So I come from the point and line, and then I have to transition. Transition wants to be shown. There's 2 axes. There's my rotation. There's my. I have this one. Wait, so they are in line or what? It can go this way, and then it can still go up, but it can still go this way. There's my 2D. And then this will transition towards this one, and this one, and this one, where there is a tilt. So orientation, direction. Oh, it sounds so weird. Tilt is not my word. Alignment. Find a different word. So this can transition from this to sideways to basically the top. Maybe it goes down from, then it goes tilts. It seems so easy. Like the way I struggled with this is like juggling so many different balls, and then things. It's like a mirror image. This is fascinating. You have one thing, and there is a ghost image, and then you realize there's another ghost image, and you treat these like separate entities, but they're still the one. They're just the same thing, Oh my god, where am I going? The same thing. Oh my god, I like this. I like this. It's so weird. It's like space. Technically, there's no space, and then there's a rift in space. It's like being teared open, and there is a line creeping out. It's like super creepy. And just one line, and then space unfolds itself. Basically, look at how kaleidoscope works, or look at how fractals work. Look at how ice crystals form, like these ice crystals that we have on our windows in the winter mornings, or basically on I don't know, water stuff on windows or whatever. Um, Definitely fractals, because they spawn at a certain point and they transition in its rhythmic geometric pattern kind of thing. And they can spawn from the point of the line where the line is already the thing, but it's folded. And then you have points that are sitting on one axis, and they are basically transition themselves away. And then you have the form. And between this, you can always apply the value to basically understand that this is in shadow and this is in light. If you keep this going and you transition more points, you get to a point where this is a sphere. Hmm, this is interesting. This is actually interesting. Okay. If I continue this, let's see. Yeah, if I had enough lines, you could draw something on top that follows the geometry. And we all know this. We all know this. We all know this. The yin and yang. Where are we going? There you go. Just constructing casual geometry stuff. It's a leading from geometric construction. We're going from geometric construction, leading towards having a pattern that screams yin and yang at you. It is a fascinating discovery. It is a very fascinating personal, for me, it is a very interesting personal discovery. There is a rhythm. And on top of this, even the yin and yang are just the construction for the sphere and the geometry. There is a rhythm. There is a pattern. It's a code. It's not random. It is, I don't know. And even yesterday I was transitioning towards like physics, where you have basically the vibration of energy that is oscillating on different frequencies and amplitudes and stuff and things, and it is forcing geometry, or basically it's forcing matter into existence. It's so weird. Like I went, I don't know, spiraling down the rabbit holes. Then again, there's no up and there's no down. So the one is the other. This again ghost images stuff, and I love it. I love it. I love this for whatever reason. For whatever reason, and still, it's like in the physical world, this has zero application, right? Like drawing stuff, there's nothing I could possibly do in this world uh, that puts this to use. Then I start to make art. So in my canvas, I have the space where this is awesome. And then transitioning towards my imagination, or the way my brain works, and it is fascinating. And I'm having weird webs. I have webs of space. Picture it like this. But it's not really a square, it's any sort of random shape that has a kind of grid set on top. And they would all transition more or less naturally, there is a perfect grid on top of everything. Then they would still transition to any sort of other shapes. And this is in flux. It is constantly moving. It is forming shapes. It is like the ocean, making waves. It goes up and down. It's building diamonds at the moment. It's so weird. Like, I have a line, then I have the square, and I can, weirdly deform my geometry. And I'm kind of like building crystals. On top of this, all I really do is I find the base angle for my plane. And then I transition around the form by all I really do is I change this angle. And I'm transitioning around the curvature, just like when you have a cylinder. You have the left point, the outside edge, right outside edge. Between these you have your arc with different compartments. If your arc has 1, 2, 3 compartments, there's your planes. These are your angles between your compartments. And if you hatch these, you're transitioning around the form. Then you lay out your form and you still transition. Think about the direction of your cylinder. Basically, where does the curvature go? And I have this curvature on the bottom, I have this curvature on the top. So if I do transition to the top, I change my angles to still go around the curvature. If I then continue this, I'm keeping this kind of in motion. If I do a different angle, I create a different surface in 3D. Just saying. So again, if I do it this way, I still create a different surface. And technically, these should spread, so it gives a little bit more oomph. But otherwise, there's my angle, and then I can still change these compartments to give me a different impression. My belly is grumbling. This will definitely turn into a VOD. Be prepared. For now, it's live, but otherwise, hello, hello, people watching the VOD. If you're still unsure, I'm talking to the future right now. If you don't know if this is a VOD or live, look into the corner of the video. It says what stuff. Otherwise, it should say live, and right now it should say live. But maybe this is a VOD, and therefore I will say it's live. But otherwise, it's a VOD. There, now I confused everybody. It's some fun. I'm mean. Twitch bully. Confusing my viewers. What's up, everybody? Slowly transitioning. I think I gotta take a quick snack break or something. Up time. It's 3 hours. Wow, I've been yapping. What's up, Mumpy? How are you doing? Yeah, well, I mean this VOD will say it's live, but it's still a VOD. I'm live VOD on tape. I'm confusing myself. I'm definitely confusing myself. I hope I'm making sense though. I hope. If you like what you see, definitely click the follow button. If you have Twitch, Amazon Prime, you have a free sub every month. Gotta go check. Maybe yours run out. I do have links. I have a Discord and stuff. What else? I'm a potato. Um, trying to do things. If anybody else wants to join the Discord, there's stuff. I have a patron. You can throw money at me. I offer free drawing. No, not free drawing. What am I saying? The drawing stuff on the stream is generally free. Obviously, I do offer drawing classes. It's like the weirdest salesman talk. Squeezing things in. Maybe it's still a VOD. Gotta keep things prepared for the future. Kappa. I'm just preparing for a quick break. I will be back. Gotta transition back to some reference and just instructions. And then the bad thing is I had stupid reference open, which kinda turns the footage into poop. Doesn't matter though. Can still have it. Oh, my belly's grumbling. This is not nice. Okay, quick break. Do I have any interesting drawings in this one? Text, text, more text. All of these weird looking drawings. There's some crazy good progress. Do I have any interesting drawings? Not really. There's 2.5 good drawings in this one. Come on, Photoshop. Bear, make it quick. I'll stuff myself with food. I will run some ads. If you want to disable your ad block or just mute and step away from the PC, go get a drink, do some things, stretch your legs. It's definitely appreciated. That's support the content. My potato content. Is it still holidays in the Americas? Definitely confusing, but I'm kind of missing people from going live when they should be live. I'll make it quick. BRB. we're back. Welcome to the Matrix, and I'm yeah. I put it in chat, and my brain is already running. Is it really? The curvature variations, abbreviations, so basically where things are not what they're supposed to be. So this is, part of curvature, up and down, and then there is the variations, where they don't really follow symmetry, but these they still work. In some cases, I have to use either one of those. Let's say this, it should shift around between. Orientation. Forward, back. Oh, I love it. Oh, I love you, brain. Forward. Curvature, I love curvature, no joke. It's so weird. Everything is weird. But here goes. Remember 12, 3, 6, and 9, so I would go this way. And then from any point on my line, or basically my curve, I have curvature that basically expands into space, and then from one point it goes down, because there's the curvature being, I don't know, placed. Some kind of information that reveals the curvature. It has to be there. So again, if this is following this angle, if the curve goes around, this would too go around, so the curvature at this point disappears, and all I see is this edge. Then technically it can come back, so I would see the snake. Depending on the perspective of the snake, I have my arc, or basically this one. It can curve in different ways, but this is still, and this is more or less linear. This is all linear. What would happen if I had a contour where my angle is different? Something is happening, like I'm already describing the surface. So between every two lines, I can choose to interpret with either concave or convex. And this too, it's, I mean, it works, right? There's nothing that can stop the brain from making sense of it. So, generally, this is not what I wanted to explain, but there is does it even exist? I think it doesn't even exist. What is this? Okay, I need a tube. There's this. Okay, I think it's not really. It's something. It's so weird right now in my brain. It's not chaos. Yeah, the chaos has returned, and I'm throwing things out of the window. Okay. This one. So tell me what effect this has. If I want to portray a cylinder that is basically shifted forward just slightly, and the curvature basically from these 2 points, it goes up, across, and then it goes down. From the other side, it goes up, across, and down, so there's a curvature. And I have one line in place. Then I still gotta go up or down, so this is my hatching that I would apply to show this. So if I do this one down and this one up, it's basically, they're the same, right? And it's not like this, right, where they are not the same. So this one is still going up. So what does this do to the perception of my form? What does this do to the actual perspective change or the form change? And then if I do it on the other side, if I do this again and I do this one like this, which is the opposite what I did on this arm, and I basically flip this over. So this one is going this way, these are going this way, and these are both going the other way. What does this do to the perception of my form? There's something, there is something. There is something. Wait. Oh my god. So the first word, cross curvature. Because usually I understand curvature following the form linear. So what is happening is, this is my form, and the curvature is being thrown across, not thrown along. It's shifted. So this one goes up across, and this is why this one is going down, as opposed to a linear alignment. And there again we have a difference. And this technically, it doesn't change the perspective. The perspective still remains, but the curvature, there's a weird something in the visualness. So the curvature does not flow around this thing. Why would it flow differently? This is completely contradicting. I have two information things, which is basically the roundness of the first cylinder. This is my base cylinder. There's my curvature, as it should be. Then I have curvature that applies to a different cylinder. It's like I project curvature from a different cylinder on top of my first one. Yeah, like right now my brain can't really see where this is going. But there's something in it, and even this makes sense. The curvature does not follow this linear. Maybe it doesn't ever follow this, because this one is already hinting direction. There again we have the so weird. See, usually you how does that even make sense? Usually I follow the linear approach, because there it goes and then it goes around. And suddenly there it goes, and then it's like, what, what is even happening? What is even happening? So weird. It's like my brain is monologuing. So the actual shape. Again, there is another layer of information where this becomes completely bungus. I don't even know. Let's say the cylinder usually has these sections aligned linear, and then you have something where these still make the cylinder as a whole, but they're completely shifted. So the flow of the lines would definitely change. And this is more along the lines. It's not geometry, it's more organic. Nature doesn't really do straight. This is still a weird kind of thing. Okay, only one applies. This is my arm from profile. It does do it this way. And there's my abbreviation. Okay, if this arm rotates to the side. Okay, there I have it. Oh, I got it. Awesome. Step by step, baby steps. I'm analyzing the code of my code of curvature. Something. When you think about drawing 3D, it gets a little bit complex, and you kind of have to look at how the brain actually interprets the things that come out of my pencil. This is what comes out of my pencil. Applying these in the proper order leads to 3D. Then you can basically build curvature and form, roundness, organic, dynamic, non-linear, non-rigid, kind of very organic, dynamic kind of form, right? Biological kind. Maybe like drawing anatomy kind of implies this. It's instead the way I draw, it's more geometric. I'm slowly deciphering the differences in how two lines in any kind of configuration describes 3D. And then suddenly I have three lines that's still in its okay. Now I gotta think, where would this go? This goes sideways. This will go up. Okay, so wait. How lines can describe 3D or 3D form, 3D space. That is what I'm slowly deciphering, including directional. There is a flow of form, and it's somewhat dictated by anatomy. It's somewhat dictated by personal preference. So just things that look interesting. There is a balance between horizontal lines and vertical lines that still manipulate the flow in some kind of way. There is a balance between angles and XYZ because horizontal and vertical change, meaning you have your plane or your cube, and every plane has its own angle. So this is the basic. You have XYZ described in line, basically. Every line sits on one of these axes. So when I then look at reference or surface, all I really got to think about is where's my XYZ. and what is the line that I need. And then I go from there, where basically things get really complex. But I talked about this probably the entire 3 hours. Thanks for the biddies, digital. Thanks for the support. Much appreciated. All the biddies, love the biddies. So effectively, ultimately, what I'm really trying is I have to go from just knowing this to basically really understanding this, where I have to master this. It's a weird word, but it kind of goes slow. There is a progression, and every time you go beyond things that you couldn't understand, it's like you expand your brain, and then you take leaps. Um, it's a it's a long process, I suppose. But still, I have to understand this so that I can effectively control it, or basically leave whatever marks on paper I leave. It's like I have to categorize those instantly and basically make make it right and make it proper before I even make any mark. As in, I have to um, know what I have to do, right? And basically know it so much that I don't make the mistake, or basically have no need for erasing. Like really know what I'm doing. Otherwise, there's a struggle. And there's like not knowing, and there's figuring out things and not knowing. But when when your mind really has this ability, like any ability, it becomes effortless. And I want drawing to be this effortless. Just like talking about drawing for me is effortless. I don't really, it's in my brain. And all of this 3D stuff is so deep in my brain that I I don't need to think. Even if it's about 3 point perspective, 2 point, any sort of perspective, it's it's so deep in my brain that it is a hardwired, constant, very strong comfort zone. And it is a zone of comfort. Because not knowing stuff is definitely not comforting. What's up, Jess? How's stuff? How's turkey eating? Shooting turkeys. Poor turkeys. They're all dead now. It goes slow, but it still goes. Go back to shoulder. Shoulder is one of the forms that I'm still analyzing. But basically, I know I have my symmetry line, and I have to transition all the form that I have on the left to the right, including staying in the perspective. So I would go step by step, right? I have straight lines. This goes up left, then it goes down, and it goes across. So I try to project these angles into perspective onto the other side. There's my plane. So there has to be a plane. And then I would slowly try to build the geometry and make sense of things. How's not eating a shooter? That's not American. If you don't shoot the turkeys, or if you don't eat the turkeys, are you even? I don't know. I'm European. We don't do things to our birds unless they stinky pigeons. I don't know. Flying geese, birds. Okay, there is definitely a difference that I can make, or I see, between direction of the thing and the actual direction, or like the orientation of the thing, the direction of the thing, and the surface, because it's not the same. So when I look at the shoulder, it should point this way, but it doesn't. The surface points this way. Technically, in this pose, this arm is very much pressed against the torso and rotated forward or inward towards the body. Otherwise, this wouldn't make sense. This could be a little bit more pronounced. There's a big back plane. This would transition between this. Technically, there is a very hard angle difference. That is 90. This is like 90 degrees between arm and torso. Pronouncing it like this helps, yes, so that I can look at these angles and figure out how do I effectively manipulate things. So change this angle probably stays the same. If I change this angle up or down, it will do something to my arm surface. Put it in a different perspective, put it in a different orientation. And I would manipulate this with all of these lines that you see. I would manipulate things around so that I can figure out how to draw like I want to draw. Or the way, like I want to describe the surface and the form in a very specific way. And that is, I mean, if you've been watching for some time, you know this. If you're new, this is kind of what I do, what I've been doing for a long time, doing studies, a lot of studies, a lot of science and analyzing, trying to really figure out how to turn drawing into a skill and then become really good, basically, in a nutshell. in way too many years, but since I decide I can share my knowledge, it will definitely shorten your journey. Yes, digital. That is a very tricky thing, and even on the reference, sometimes it looks different, and you see a separation between. Sometimes it's continuous, right? Complete line. Otherwise, sometimes you have this happen where you see the trapezius muscle disappear, and it goes up on the neck, and then you have this guy shooting in front because it's like tensed. How do you say this when you tense your muscles? Yeah, that kind of stuff. So it would separate the tissues between this point so that there is a more clear separation between the surface that is still continuous. And I still, that is a weird kind of part, but I'm getting there step by step. Flexed, yes. I never flex. I don't even lift. I only tense. I dance. Dance? Tense? Words. This is not really about anatomy. It's knowing how to draw form. That is where it starts, and then you learn about the anatomy, so you can apply your ability of drawing form in general to just making your form look like the anatomy that you want to draw. And the way I draw now, this is by no means something, and I think I said this before. It's not something I received from just studying anatomy. I did not study anatomy. Like maybe 10, 12, 15% of my studies was actual anatomy. The other part is how do I draw this? How do I really, throw down marks that reveal form and space and volume and all the good stuff so that I can learn, learn to become really good and figure out how to draw different things Yes, contracted. That's another word. But my brain slow. Surface curvature direction. There is a difference. There is something in between that happens. There's my gap. This is normal. This is a split. And then between, there is something between these two lines that has to be suitable. Otherwise, this does not work because, oh, does it? There could be a transition because this is continuous. Then it breaks. And then something else happens. Then it continues. So weird. Oh, there's something in the curvature. There's something in the alignment of planes that carry the curvature. And I know this because I've been there. I'll quickly, I don't need a new layer. Backplane. Backplane, side plane basically ribs, front of the ribcage torso. And this is where the curvature for the backplane does this. The plane for the side of the torso goes around this way, and it's following a different alignment. It's not following the same alignment as the back. And then on the torso, you know there's boobs, but still, it could technically go around this way. Basically, it's weird. Let's see. This is complete profile. If this is a weird perspectives, still there's something in the flow of the torso. Torso from the front, the lines, there's your symmetry line which connects to this one. The lines don't go straight, but they flow around the curvature. This means the lines that I would see, they would follow this kind of inclination, and then they still connect to this one. Otherwise, the curvature can still flow around the other way, and then, oh my god, what is happening in between? Because technically there is a connection. Okay, if it stays in the perspective, let's cut it. Yeah, what do I have to do? Where's my have a good Sunday, Max Renaud. So in between I can have linear, I can have there's no flow. Then if I do this, I can have another axis. Okay. What are these moves? Oh, it's a weird geometry. That's unintended. It's not supposed to be. It's not even supposed to be the moves. Just want to have the tissue between arm and torso.